What's up? What's up? This is Benji Bruce here with SpeakingLifestyle.com, and we just got done doing 57 events last year, and this year we're on track to do 70 events, and I'm going to show you how we basically went about filling the schedule on a consistent basis. Now, this video is actually part of the Speaker LeadGen Project, where I'm going to essentially help 20 speakers build out their systems for getting a consistent stream of people just contacting you to hire you. But we're going to talk about that in another video. So basically, so far, I've really been holding back on just telling a lot of speakers on how to get booked, because I truly believe that a lot of speakers couldn't really handle the truth. They treat this more like a hobby rather than a business. They essentially want the magic pill rather than what actually works. But I decided that since I'm going to be spending more time on stage instead of actually teaching this, then I'll essentially just teach this to the few speakers who actually want to get serious with their speaking business. So I decided I'm just going to give you everything, whether you can handle it or not. In this video, I'm going to walk you through how I filled up my entire speaking schedule on a consistent basis. But before I do that, I want to ask you a question, and I want you to be brutally honest with yourself. I mean, be brutally honest. Here's the question. Where were you 6 months ago or a year ago in your speaking business? But where were you 6 months ago? You probably had goals for your speaking business. You probably thought that you would have more paid gigs than you did now. You probably even thought that you'd be making a lot more in general. But be honest with your current situation. I mean, be honest. Has it changed much? And more importantly, what's going to happen if you keep doing what you're currently doing? There's actually this speaker. Well, I get a lot of emails from speakers, but this one speaker, he sent me a message about, I don't know, maybe 7-8 months ago. Let's call him John. And he wanted me to help him book more speaking gigs. So I essentially just asked, how is he currently getting gigs? And he said through word of mouth. Now, a lot of times when speakers tell me that, I know that they don't actually have a system. I mean, word of mouth means that you essentially don't have a process for getting yourself booked. You kind of just wait by the phone and just hope that someone's going to contact you. So I told John that he needs to build out his systems. He needs to have a system for getting leads. I mean, if you want 50 gigs per year, then he needs a system that will at least book him 1 gig per week. If you aren't consistently getting leads, getting people coming to you and saying, hey, we want to hire you as a speaker for our event, if you're not getting that on a consistent basis, then you don't really have a speaking business. Think about how powerful it would be if you had the right things in place so you knew that you were going to just constantly get a consistent stream of speaking gigs flowing in. But John, he was pretty desperate when he was sending the emails, and he really wanted me to help him personally. So I actually told him about the coaching program since he wanted me to personally talk to him. And that's actually when John flipped out. And he essentially said that he doesn't like paying for information. He said that he doesn't want to spend the money. And then he asked, like, hey, why should I pay you? And that's essentially putting it nicely. I mean, let's just say that John was pretty pissed off that I told him to invest in coaching if he wanted me to personally help him. So what did I do? Well, normally I wouldn't reply, because essentially someone who doesn't see the power of having the right information to build their business faster, they're just hard to deal with. But on the other hand, I decided to try something. So I told John, I said, hey, I want you to record where you're at now, and I want you to record how many gigs you have lined up, record your current systems that you have right now, like how he gets leads for his speaking business, record everything, basically record his current state. Then I told him in 6 months, I want him to record everything again. Record how many gigs he has, record how many lead generation systems he has in place, basically record everything 6 months away from now. And I said that if you're in the same spot 6 months from now as you are today, then that's why it's important to invest in your business. Is he doing it? I'm not sure. But what I was trying to tell him is that if you don't have lead generation systems set up in your business, then that's why you don't have a lot of gigs lined up. If you have the right systems, you can get several gigs coming in consistently. And if you keep doing what you've been doing, if you keep, I don't know, checking your Facebook, reading a book, just reading a book every now and again, reading a free blog post and all that stuff, if you just keep doing what you're currently doing, then in 6 months, you're going to be in the very same spot as you are now. But think about this. What if John knew that by contacting X number of people, he would get Y number of gigs? I mean, what if he had systems in place that once he set it up, he knew that he would be able to fill up his schedule consistently? Filling up your schedule isn't hard when you know what to do. It's not hard when you have these lead generation systems in place, and that's what I want to talk about. I'm going to show you how I was able to fill up my schedule. I'm going to basically tell you everything that I was really doing to get all these gigs. The thing is that you essentially need to know exactly how you get people coming to hire you. You need to know how it is you're going to get people to come and say, hey, we want to hire you for a gig. I mean, let me give you an idea of what you need to do to book 50 paid events this year. So first, you need to get at least 1 gig per week. That's 4 gigs a month. And in order for that to happen, you have to be consistently visible to the people that can obviously hire you to speak. Now, I don't want to talk about your website, your demo, your bio. I don't want to talk about none of that. I just want to talk about the specific things that you have to do to get yourself on stage. The question that you have to ask yourself is, am I getting 1 gig per week? If you want 50 gigs a year, you have to ask, am I getting at least 1 gig per week? Now, think about what that really means. I mean, not every person who contacts you is going to hire you. So it's not like, am I just contacting 50 people? It's that you're going to have to contact way more than 50, obviously. It's not like you need to talk to just one person a week. You need to essentially multiply the people that you contact every week in order for you to book just 1 gig for that week. And the big question is, do you know how to get a steady stream of people to contact you for a gig? Now, before I go further, by the way, I do want to point something out that it might seem a little harsh. I want you, I mean, as you answer any of these questions, I want you to be 100% honest with yourself. When I ask a speaker, how's your business doing? They always say it's doing great every single time. But I know deep down they're not getting as many gigs as they want. In fact, I know that 99% of speakers are actually struggling. And when they say that they get their gigs through word of mouth and referrals, I know that deep down they don't have a clue on how to book like 50 gigs a year. They don't really have systems in place. It's not that they can't fill up their schedule. It's just that the first step to doing it is to realize that you need to be 100% honest with yourself. It's one thing to lie to someone else. It's another to lie to yourself. And as you're listening to this, if I ask you, do you know how to book a consistent stream of gigs? And are you booking at least 50 gigs a year? Be 100% real with yourself, 100% honest. Are you really doing it or not? The only way to get better is to realize where you're currently at. It's to realize that you do need help with where you're at. So as you listen to this, whenever I ask you a question, be honest with yourself. If you didn't book 50 gigs last year, then say it. You didn't book 50 gigs. That doesn't mean you can't do it. It just means you didn't do it. Now, of course, you can fill up your schedule. Of course, you can get 50 gigs. Anyone can really do it. But what I'm getting at is that if you're not consistently filling up your speaking schedule, then something needs to change. What needs to change? So first, let's start off with where you're at. I want you to ask yourself, how many paid gigs did you book last year? And really write down the number. How many did you book last year? Now, ask yourself, how many paid gigs do you want to book this year? Earlier, I mentioned that we're going to do 70 events for 2015. That means that we have to average 6 gigs per month, which is about 1.5 gigs a week, 1 to 2 gigs a week. The question is, how do we do that? How are we going to consistently get that? The answer is actually very simple. I mean, I do have lead generation systems in place that fill up my speaking schedule on a consistent basis. So I'll tell you about it in just a second, but there's nothing game changing about my systems. And in fact, you've heard of all of them before. There's no magic pill. There's no game changing method that allows you to book speaking gigs. It's just a matter of mastering what works and translating it to your current situation. What I mean by essentially translating it, a lot of times I say, like, you need to translate this advice. What I mean by translating is that if I say something like cold calling is a system, then that doesn't really help you all that much. I mean, you still have to know who to call. You have to know, which would be, just you calling someone, it would obviously be different if you're a leadership speaker versus a sales speaker. I mean, you have to know what it is you're going to say when you pick up the phone, which is obviously going to be different if you're a leadership speaker versus if you're a sales speaker. So you have to know these little things. That's what I mean by translating it. Basically, you can't confuse knowing about something with the implementation process because it's completely different. Now, lead generation systems, they're exactly that. They're systems, meaning you set it up once and you're good to go. I mean, once the skeleton of the system is set up, then it's just a matter of making the systems better. It's a matter of improving it. So here are essentially 12 lead generation systems, and these are systems that I help you build in the Speaker LeadGen Project, which we'll talk about in another video. But here are the 12 systems. Number 1, cold calling. Number 2, an email sequence. 3 is a direct mail. 4 is Google AdWords. 5 is search engine optimization, which is SEO. 6 is Facebook ads. 7 is speaker bureaus. 8 is sponsorship. 9 is publicity. 10 is YouTube ads. 11 is social media, and 12 is referral engine. Now, none of those are game changing. In fact, you've heard of all those before, probably, but there's a right way to use them and the wrong way. Now, remember when I said that we're going to do 70 events for 2015? That means that we obviously need about 1.5 gigs per week. 1 to 2 gigs per week. Well, let's take an example from one of the lead generation systems that I currently use. Let's take Google AdWords as an example. Most speakers, they know what this is. They know what Google AdWords is. So let me tell you how we use this as our system. First, I know that for every $700 that I spend, about 200 people will click on my ad, and about 4 of them are going to be serious. About 4 of them are going to contact me, and 1 of them for sure is going to book me for a gig. Now, I also know that the average budget a client has from seeing me on AdWords is only $5,000. That's the average budget. After spending $700, I'm essentially getting $5,000 back. But I still want the $10,000 gigs. So let me tell you how this actually happens. So first, we spend money on AdWords and get a single gig. So we spend about $750 max or whatever on AdWords. We get a gig. Then that's essentially one lead generation method for getting the initial gig. But then I use the referral engine, the referral system that I have set up, and I use that to get multiple gigs based on that one gig. Now, most speakers, they actually don't take advantage of a gig. They just go, they speak, maybe they ask for a referral, but they don't really take full advantage of it. So the referral engine is actually set up to book multiple gigs from just one. It's like a spider web if you think about it. Now, the AdWords campaign, it doesn't run every month. We don't have it just consistently going because we don't really need it to run just on a consistent basis. Once we get one initial gig from the AdWords campaign, the referral engine takes over. But I want to point something out. It did take me forever to learn how to use AdWords the right way, and I can't tell you how much money I lost on AdWords by doing it wrong, but once we got it right, then we just kind of turn it on, it's ready to go, and then we turn it off, and things like that. But based on the numbers of spending $700 to get one gig, If we spend $3,000 a month on AdWords, we will get about 4 gigs a month. And that doesn't count the back end where I get the spin-off gigs. So even if it cost me, even if it wasn't just $700 to get the 1 gig, even if it cost me $6,000 to get 1 gig, $6,000, it's still worth it because I can book multiple gigs on the back end from that 1 gig. But all of this works only because I have systems in place that naturally work. I figured out how to get AdWords to work for my business. I figured out how to get all the systems to work for my business. I know for AdWords, I know what keywords work. I know what ads work. I just know the system. I know that because that's what our system is set up to do. That's why I filled up my 2014 schedule with a combination of AdWords and the referral engine. In the beginning, it was obviously different because I didn't really have a good website to send people to for the AdWords, but I did have systems in place in the beginning. It was more cold calls and the emails. I mean, simple things like recording how many people you contact versus how many people who hire you are really important for building your systems because it lets you know what's working and what you need to improve. So if you use cold calling as a system and you know that for every 500 people you contact, one of them is going to hire you. But then you all of a sudden decide to try AdWords, you implement the AdWords system, and you know that for every, let's say 200 people who see you, one of them hires you. Which one is a better system? The cold calling where after contacting 500, one hires you, or the AdWords where after 200 people see you, one hires you? Which one would you obviously focus your time on? You would obviously stop doing so much cold calling and focus more on your AdWords campaign and making it 1,000,000 times better. Or maybe you realize that, let's say when you cold call, you only contact 100 people a day. But then all of a sudden you implement the email sequence, and when you're sending emails, you contact 200 people a day. And because you know the numbers, you're thinking to yourself, well, when I send emails, I contact 200 a day, but when I make calls, I only contact 100 people a day. So naturally, you're going to start to go with the email system. Little things like this really matter when you're building out your lead gen systems. In the next video, I'm actually going to walk you through the process of how I'm going to fill up my schedule with the 70 gigs in this upcoming year. But right now, you need to make sure that you actually have systems in place. I mean, just imagine how easier it would be if you were just getting gigs on a consistent basis. I mean, if you were getting a consistent stream of people contacting you every single week to hire you. That's what systems do. That's what the Speaker LeadGen Project is all about. It's literally about how to build the systems that fill up your entire speaking schedule on a consistent basis. So be on the lookout for the next video. I'll tell you exactly how I'm going to do the 70 gigs for 2015.